Hello, good morning, and welcome to Sunrise Daily Today. I'm Chamberlain. So,
good morning. I'm Malpe Ogun Yusuf. Shall I say thank God it's Friday?
Absolutely. Well, you can. You already did. So, why not?
What a week it has been. So making it up until this point, oh yes, you have to thank God. Welcome to Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Good morning and welcome. I don't know how many days we are counting now into the inauguration, but it's 2 days into the month, into the new month. And how many days into the fuel situation?
I know that one very well. 4 or 5 days.
4 or 5 days.
Depending on who's counting and how you're counting. Some are counting from Monday, some counting from Tuesday.
I'm gonna start this discourse, Kayode, with this Mr. and Mrs. on the front page of Vanguard newspaper today. So Mr. is already complaining.
As always.
As many people will be complaining. So Mr. is saying, what do you mean by prices of commodities have gone up by 1,000% because of removal of petrol subsidy? 1,000%? Come on. Do you think I don't read newspapers? And Mrs. says, maybe you've been reading the entertainment pages only.
Ouch. And sports. I'm very sure of the sports part.
Well, of course, sports is entertaining. So.
Exactly.
And you know, the reality here is that it's only he who feels it that knows it. When you suddenly say, you know, this is now the final figure, this is the cost of this thing. Now, yesterday we bought it at X price. Yeah. Now it's X times X price. Then you begin to wonder exactly what's going on here. I had to go buy fuel yesterday. I think I bought about 30-something liters, which perhaps I'd ordinarily have bought for about, say, I don't even know, maybe 5,000 or less, or maybe 7,000, less than 10,000 though. I bought at 500 naira per liter, and it was almost 20,000, and my tank wasn't even 1/4 gone.
You're giving a lot of things away, by the way. I can imagine what kind of vehicle you use with that
Keep
tank
imagining.
size.
But the point is, someone posted on Twitter his Tundra, and he said he spent 53,000 naira to top the tank.
And that's why a lot of people are making major lifestyle changes now. So people, instead of buying the usual fill up, you know, you just go to the filling station and you just like a desiccantly say fill up, you know, fill up the tank. Now, no, don't fill up, but just sell 30 liters. Or
my strategy now is I won't even allow you to go 1/4 of the way. Fill up.
Exactly, and I've seen different people trying to adjust in different ways. It's different strokes for different people. Yeah. There's some that their lifestyle can accommodate. I mean, they can afford to still fill up anyway because they can afford that. But you've seen people opting for bicycles, for example, to take bicycles. You've seen people trekking outrightly or just measuring it. Okay, I'll take public transport maybe half the way and trek the rest. I saw someone put it on Twitter yesterday, jokingly saying there should be an app where you can pull together people trekking from a certain place to the other so they can come together and just trek, you know, together. But the point here is a lot of people have had to make major lifestyle changes.
Including
they didn't plan for that, by the way.
Including a House of Assembly officer of the House of Assembly in
one of those states. Let me confirm which of those states that is now. I think it was in Adamawa.
Yeah, Adamawa State.
Yes, Adamawa, opting to take a bicycle. So people that have to fuel their generating sets for business now, I wonder how they're coping. Maybe some of them only wait for when there's power to conduct business. And that's another point we have raised. Why isn't the power sector optimal, or at least working optimally before this decision was made? Imagine people that have to fill their, their blending machines, for example, vulcanizers that have to buy fuel for their machines. How are they getting by? Are they still doing business? Can they still afford to fill up? Well, I mean, their tanks are literally. So can they still afford? So that means they might have to increase, you know, how much they're charging. And altogether, I just wonder how people are getting by, really. For some of us, we've had to, you know, jettison our cars for a long time now. So let us know, how are you getting by? What lifestyle changes have you had to make? Bearing in mind that it was last minute, we didn't prepare for this one.
It's not even, some kind of saw this coming a long time ago. One of them is my colleague sitting next to me. Kind of saw this coming a long time ago and just, you know, kind of began to make these lifestyle changes. And look, the reality is, we've waited for so long. There are a number of questions, of course, that we're going to be asking our guests, because this matter is not just going to go away. We need to talk about them and find a consensus somewhere, both from Nigerians and from the authorities, to ensure that the bite isn't too strong and and unbearable for people. So the lifestyle changes that people have to make, the concessions. I remember, and I'm sure some of you may also remember the lifestyle changes your own parents had to make when things got worse, so to speak, when things got tougher. I always remember my dad saying in the 80s that milk is expensive now. You're going to have to cut it down from your meal. My dad said my younger brother and I, were less than 10, saying to him, don't worry, Dad, it's okay.
Oh, bless your heart. Such understanding children.
So tell a child now that, Daddy, there is no milk. Darling, there is no milk. The next question you're going to hear is, why? Abuja.
Oh, goodness.
Dear. I wish they could go on and on. I was actually enjoying that. Kayode, I mean, Ayo letting off the kind of car he drives. I was going to tell him that there is a reason why Uber drivers prefer Toyota Corolla. You might want to consider that. Oh, well. Yesterday, I decided to just get a shot of, the shock treatment, or should I say shock therapy that we've been served. Honestly, I still had petrol in my vehicle, but I live pretty far away from work, not like some people who can afford to ditch their cars. Well, some of us still have to hold on, very preciously to those vehicles and make sure they're in very good working condition. Interestingly, I mean, visiting the NNPC along the road to where I live, there was still a significant number of cars. Perhaps I should even send this video to the producer, because I was like, what's going on? I thought they said there were no cars in the filling stations. As a matter of fact, a small queue was beginning to form right behind me. And I was wondering what's going on. Then taking a peek at, what other customers at the filling stations were doing, I saw a lady buying as much as 80,000 naira. I was wondering, you mean this car takes this much? I don't know, to be very honest. Maybe she bought in a jerry can before filling her tank. Je ne sais pas, but she was buying. And, a number of other people were also buying. People in front of me, they were like 2 or 3 cars ahead of me. And it seemed that they filled their tanks. Well, I also filled my tank, but it was not empty. It was still way above half. I just wanted to see what it would feel like buying fuel at the new price that we now have to buy. And, well, it was interesting. At least I had a fair idea of what it would now take to fill my tank. And I was saying, well, we'll all now have to cut our coat according to our cloth. There'll be no frivolous trips. In fact, I've never really enjoyed driving all the way from where I live to town for no reason at all. We'll have to squeeze in as many errands as we have in town into one trip, as much as possible. So these changes will make us also teasing. I can't remember what I was telling you. I was saying my husband, who always likes to say, look, if you have your own errands, maybe you should come in your own car. Maybe we'll learn to fit into one car and learn to accommodate one another better. These are the kinds of changes that we might see that households might need to make as a result of these adjustments. But the days ahead, I think what we really feel it, transport might be a challenge, yes, but it's an inevitable challenge. What is actually very painful and where my own sympathy, excuse me, the people I really, really have a lot of sympathy for are business people. And I think that as a matter of urgency, there needs to be something done for those who need this to run their businesses. In the areas where electricity supply is really poor, I want to believe that the distribution companies, the generation companies, and the transmission companies will need to up their game as a matter of urgency. I cannot imagine households having to buy this to, get electricity in their houses. I cannot imagine wives, mothers who have gone to the market to buy things at really expensive rates, perhaps to store them for a while, having to deal with lack of electricity and things in their refrigerators going bad. That would be totally unacceptable. I can't imagine small business people, just because if you ask who are those who really use little generators, petrol generators, it will be small business people. Big business people already have, large diesel generators, and they've already been dealing with this deregulated diesel prices since forever. They had their own shock treatment sometime last year when diesel went from about 300 naira to 800 naira, sometimes 900. Even heard it hit about 1,000. But for small businesses who will now start to recalibrate and start to ask themselves, at what rate am I going to be selling my products now or my services? I think that, there needs to be an urgent intervention in the area of electricity. And there needs to be an intervention in terms of, mass transport. In Abuja here, it's particularly bad. Maybe in parts of Lagos, at least you have a BRT, and maybe a BRT, they've been running on, I imagine they've been running on diesel, etc. Maybe more people, the queues might be longer, and you can tell the Lagos state government to provide more buses. I don't know how it is in many other parts of Nigeria, and what sort of transport services exist in those places. But I can speak for Abuja, where we live, that there is actually no mass transit. It is very sad that a federal capital territory doesn't have any system in place to ferry people from one place to another. So there needs to be an urgent intervention in the area of mass transit. I imagine that these are some of the things. We know that Labour is to have a meeting today, perhaps amongst themselves first before they had that meeting with the federal government. I imagine that these are some of the things that they will be intervening in, but these matters needed to be treated with some sense of urgency. And I also want to impress it upon those in the power sector that, excuses will no longer be tolerated by the Nigerian people. Their patience is already very thin. I imagine, we don't want to see another breakout of protests, but if we do, my sense tells me that it most likely might be as a result of a lack of electricity.
Well, this kind of thing, it's people are angry. They're trying to see if they can understand government's directive and stance and why this is happening at this point in time. So at some point, that pent-up anger may look for an avenue to express itself, hence why it will be crucial, it will be hugely important for the power sector to get it right, or for the government to also come up with a plan to ensure that we get it right in that power sector. And then, look, for cars who have got to go by fuel, what would they do? They can't jettison or throw away, abandon all those other cars. And maybe those ones you saw at the petrol stations, maybe those families have about 2, 3, and then they decided to just get one, fill up one, and then ride share with family members, possibly. Because in some other societies, they make provisions for this kind of thing, such that if I think, is it HOV lanes or something they call it? Where if there's more than one occupant in that car, then you can apply a certain lane in some of those expressways. So they make provisions for all of those, such that you learn to leave your cars at home. They make provisions. But here, we just don't see any such thing as of yet. And of course, you don't expect citizens to be happy if politicians, political office holders, public officers, after this price adjustment, high, whatever you call it, begin to live frivolous lives.
And have long convoys.
And then begin to run people out of the streets, begin to act as though they're lords, Lord of the Ring or whatever they call it. Those kind of actions, of course, society is not exactly happy. So we haven't even heard the policies that will come through on the part of the government concerning taxation. So there's just so many. And that's why we'll be talking to small businesses today to get a feel of what is going on, because they, as you have rightly highlighted, are hugely impacted, like we all are. I mean, it's not just those big businesses that use, not just the small ones that use diesel or petrol. Some other households do. So, and they feel the pinch as well. But people have got to get on with their lives. They have to find a way. It doesn't mean they should be taken for a ride. So all of those things, we'll see how much of them we can highlight and focus on today. But above all else, governments across board, they have got to ramp up their communication to people, because if we can tell where an avenue for people to express themselves or their frustrations, if they feel hard done by, if they feel they're not being listened to or being heard. All right, so we'll keep our tabs on that one, as a matter of fact, and see what government's narrative is in some of the dailies, which we will jump right into and take a look at for you today. So, several of them now, just trying to see where to go. Let's start with Vanguard newspaper. Subsidy. New players will make petrol price come down. Ascribed to Kyari. So, yeah, he's been speaking about this policy, whys and wherefore. So, what people make of it then remains to be seen. But of course, we know that the rationale behind that margin, people still don't understand it. I mean, a colleague sent me a message some time ago about a letter, which was then Gongola State 1977 document, which stated, notice, increase in price of milk. So they had said, following the announcement on national radio on the increase in the price, now the old price was 9 naira 60 kobo. The new one now is 11 naira 52 kobo. So they were explaining to all of them to please try and adjust. And at that time, it appeared as though, I mean, I'm sure they'll be saying, this is not enough, it appears sane. These days, you just wake up and see the adjustments and you're wondering, nobody seems to owe you an explanation. Even with PSC, NEPA those days, and then where they had to appeal to you, write you, notify you of what's going to happen. But these days...
No, NNPC wrote a letter. NNPC released a statement, saying that, well, there's now a price increase, which will now reflect market dynamics.
Well, that was after the template has circulated. People were wondering what's going on. IPMAN members said they got this off the cuff. It wasn't initially formal. It was through an anonymous source, and they said, well, we couldn't quote anybody on this one. So in order to bridge this gap, they had to then come.
Well, the NNPC GMD admitted, or GCEO has now called on our sister program last night, that indeed that template was meant for their own internal use, but it was leaked. So I guess somehow this communications, we're in the days of social media. Perhaps in those days they might have had a leak as well before a formal explanation of what was going on.
There's so much on that.
It's very difficult to control the narrative these days, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But I'm going to have to highlight, well, the security will come to that much later. Customs target $200 billion in fresh PPP. Okay. All right. That's Vanguard today. There's several other papers, but that will be it for Vanguard.
I'm taking a look at The Guardian for you, and take a look at what you see here. 11 years after Occupy Nigeria. Do you remember Occupy Nigeria? Yes, we've had all manner of protests against the removal of subsidy before now. Occupy Nigeria was the name of that protest. Tinubu toes painful path to economic rebirth. Every time people talk about hardship, they always recall the 80s, as if, the children who were born in the 80s didn't experience any hardship. I lived in this country when people were talking about Abacha stove. Do you remember that? The stove made out of sawdust. I remember still, well, we didn't use it, but at least I saw people, I knew families that used it. My mother would say her gas, no one dares go near her gas cooker. If you want to cook, use the kerosene stove. So I still remember those days. I remember the days of 101. You want to eat, this is the timetable. You have breakfast, there'll be no lunch until dinner time again. So, I mean, we've lived through quite a number of seasons where families have had to make adjustments. The question is, for a number of people, the number of people who have gotten poorer over the years, people who have had to make adjustments over the years, and you now ask them to make even further adjustments. I think that, you know, whatever it is the government does, they need to find a way to target the poorest of the poor and make sure that people are at least able to have a meal a day. That's extremely important, Chamberlain. It would be disheartening to find that, you know, their citizens will go to bed with nothing in their stomachs.
That's why we say, look, when people ask government officials or public officials questions, they have to know that people have a right to know certain things. It's nobody, we always said, nobody goes to government with their pocket money. It's public funds. You're a public officer. You should be accountable to the public. So when they ask you all of these questions, you have to explain to the people, because these are the people who are the reason why you are there in the first place. But anyway, this president says, look, don't pity me. I sought for this job.
Indeed.
So I will do it. All right.
So that's the latest story there. 11 years after Occupy Nigeria, Tinubu toes painful path to economic rebirth. You also see the petrol subsidy removal. NLC debunks strike action. Yeah, that also went round yesterday. Unveils position today after consultation. So that is also there. Tinubu meets intelligence security chiefs, gives mandate to tackle insecurity. Nigeria's business conditions, confidence in economy level hit 5-month high. So it does appear that, you know, there are those who think that this is actually the path to tow, and maybe with these signals, maybe yes, their money might be able to find way to do business in this country. Well, it's early days yet, as we say. Early days yet. It's just a few days since the president said subsidy is gone. So maybe early days, but at least the markets and investors seem to be responding favorably to the signal that he sent. Let us leave it there for the Guardian newspapers.
Well, for the Nigerian Tribune, security meets the petroleum sector. And it's coming from the president. I will not tolerate oil theft, Tinubu tells security chiefs, warns against interagency rivalry, wants operatives in the field of war to be well fed, properly kitted, motivated. Very, very important points. I remember we had seen some videos, you know, of the soldiers on the field
protesting.
Protesting, and you just wonder. And these are people that have the, you know, the fate of Nigeria in their hands, literally, and you expect that all of the attention will be paid to them. So we hope that this goes beyond just the usual talk that we hear after these meetings.
Well, coming at on the heels of his own
inaugural
speech and all of those things that we heard, and a number of people coming out to say the president is not a talker, he's a doer. Well, he's not going to have to do it alone.
But please, we need a talking president and a doing president at the same time. So,
I would rather have a quiet one that does.
We need I mean, you, as the vanguard for communication, hey, there's a story right at the left top corner of the front page. EFCC quizzes fire me over alleged 4 billion naira money laundering. That got a lot of people surprised. Page 4, rather, page 12. The figure is 4 billion. The page is 12, right? Page 12 of the Nigerian Tribune has more details. We're good to hear the former governor also speak about this one. Just one more for you now, and it's right there. No more sit at home in Enugu, Mba declares. That's the Nigerian Tribune.
What is subsidy got to do with the CBN? Well, the answer is on the New Telegraph, front page of New Telegraph this morning. And this is what you have. Subsidy. Reps want 413 billion naira borrowed from CBN audited. It's ask FG to suspend direct sales, direct purchase contracts. APC summons NNPCL, GCO, Northern Women, Mieti Alala, others seek NLC action. Subsidy captured in current budget, according to Labour. Subsidy removal ill-timed, ploy to impoverish Nigerians. Middle Belt Forum. I don't even know what to say to this, but you know that big story is right there on the front page. Borrowed money from CBN. Okay, is this supposed to be the one to cover subsidy for the month of June? Well, the answers you may find on pages 2, 3, and 8. 2, 3, 8, and 26 of New Telegraph this morning. And all the talk, all the issues about the 10th National Assembly, bottom of the page has the story. Lawan to Tinubu, we must contain 10th National Assembly crisis. Stories on page 4. There's still fire on the mountain, according to a source. NAS leadership of national interest. Tinubu will bring parliamentary sovereignty. That's Kalu speaking. I'll be speaker by June 13. that's ascribed to Abbas. Find the details on page 4. This last one, quitting smoking can improve mental health. Really? So, anyway, that's the New Telegraph newspaper this morning, and that's
it
of the papers we can take this morning. We're back right after now to begin to take the issues, and of course, one that every story that we're taking on this morning will interest you, so stay with us.
For the first time since his assumption into office, President Bola Tinubu meets with security chiefs, the Inspector General of Police, and security agencies at the State House. The president issued a mandate to the chiefs premised on his ideologies on how security should be tackled.
We have left Mr. President fired with that mandate and to realign our interventions to fit the expectations, not just of Nigerians, of course, with the mandate that Mr. President has given to us.
The president again promised a reform in the system, issuing caution to security agencies against working at variance with themselves.
In moving this country forward, he needs the security agencies to redouble their efforts, and he's also pointed out that his own philosophy is one of contemporary security measures on the issues of oil theft that he is not going to tolerate. Wherever the problem is coming from, it must be crushed as soon as possible. All agencies must work to achieve one single purpose. Working at cross purposes and colliding with each other is not something that he will condone.
Please. Separately, President Tinubu met with the President of the Senate, Senator Ahmed Lawan, who is accompanied by the Speaker of the House of Representatives in his office.
I find it dutiful and necessary to work with all the major stakeholders, especially the leadership of our country, Mr. President particularly, to ensure that I give the necessary, my necessary opinion and advice on how the new leadership of the National Assembly should emerge and what we need to do to ensure stability. We are getting somewhere. Our prayer is we're able to resolve all the outstanding issues by the grace of God.
In a chat with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Channels Television sought affirmation about his appointment as Chief of Staff to the President.
So congratulations is in order. It hasn't been made official. Is there a reason for that?
Be patient. Be patient. The system works in its own way. Allow the system to work.
So before the end of the day?
We'll see. We'll see. Thank you.
The meeting of the National Assembly leadership is followed by APC-anointed candidates for speakership, Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, and Deputy Speakership, Honorable Ben Kalu.
We restricted our discussions to the matters of the day, issues that have to do with the challenges that this country is facing, particularly the economic and social challenges, and what he intends to do within the next few days, beginning with what he has done on the issue of fuel subsidy. issues of other candidates did not form part of what we discussed with Mr. President.
The president wrapped up activities in the office with the visit of the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Mr. Abdulrashid Bawa, who is seen at the presidential villa for the second time in 24 hours. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Welcome back. So we'll be trying to understand the implications of that meeting and possibly what to expect. And so we've got Rear Admiral Matthew Emekwere, who is a retired senior naval officer here this morning. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You know, there are quite a number of people who don't know what to make of this meeting because they predicate that on several meetings that happened with service chiefs in the last government, the kinds of killings that went on, the ones the media were able to report, the ones, because there were some that certainly they were not able to report, the action or inaction of government at that time, including security agencies, the impression that people have as though they were looking the other way or aiding and abetting some of these things rightly or wrongly, because people will make the impressions whatever happens. So now with this, they just feel, look, let's see what happens. But when he then says he won't tolerate oil theft, you need to work together. There are several suggestions and implications of that one. But last time out, we also did hear the NNPC say that these oil thefts, they operated a legal pipeline along the Forcados shore for 9 years. And then the media was awash with all of those. There was panels set up. We wait the reports, nothing concrete as of yet. And then this meeting. How do you relate with all of this?
Thank you very much for inviting me to your program. And I'm here as a private citizen to discuss the subject matter. I think the meeting is expected because before the president was sworn in, he may not be privy to certain security reports or security briefings, which, of course, as president now, and commander-in-chief is entitled to such briefing. So I think the visit of the service chiefs and the chief of defense staff is timely, just I think 4 days after or 5 days after taking over, for him to be updated of the current security situation in the country and for him to be aware of how the security arrangement or the security architecture of the country is in place. I think with that briefing and with that knowledge, which I believe the president is having now, he will be able to direct the service chiefs and other leaders or headship of the security and intelligence agency on what is expected of them.
But right off, what do you expect from, in terms of the kind of actions the president should take, and then possibly actions from the security agencies as things stand today?
I think what I expect the president to do is to, as much as possible, see how he can learn from the mistake of the past. And of course, he has his own agenda and what he wants to achieve as President Commander-in-Chief. So what I expect the president to do, which I believe he has done with the meeting he has had with the service chiefs and the chief of defense staff, is for him to, first of all, see how he can hold the leadership of the various security and intelligence agencies accountable to the people for their actions and decisions. That's what I expect him to do. And also for him to have close supervision on what these agencies are doing.
There was, I mean, Nigerians expect to hear the outcome of all the investigation about the crude oil theft. Because how could that amount of theft be going on a grand scale, and then government appears or NNPC appears to feign ignorance? Many don't buy that because that's not crime for the small thieves. It appears as though it's almost institutional kind of scenario here. Shouldn't they be talking to us? I mean, the NSA himself did speak, saying in last government that yes, this panel is in place, there's something, a report that will come through. We should be talking about that as well, shouldn't we?
Yes, I think that's an area too the president should address, where the people deserve to know the outcome of investigation as it relates to crude oil theft or other infractions that may have taken place. So I buy that idea, what you've said. They should brief the public periodically on actions taken. And if, of course, there are anybody who is prosecuted based on such infractions, why not?
Give me your impression on this. Now, certain scenarios may play out here. If the security agencies start getting results or get better results than they did the last time, people will wonder, wait a minute, so why is this the case now? Was it dependent upon the commander-in-chief? Or that means what? Was it that the former commander-in-chief didn't pull his weight as he ought to have? Or what? And if they don't get that kind of results, it means we should expect some shake-up in that sector. So what do you see happening?
I expect to see a change because the personnel...
What kind of change?
A change in form of probably change of leadership is expected, which is the usual practice anyway, where the commander-in-chief has the prerogative to choose who should head whatever institutions he desire. So the change may not be immediate, but I expect, which is the usual practice, for the president to change the leadership of the heads of military and other security agencies. I expect such changes. But if I may answer the question you just asked, if there is any drastic change in the outcome of the activities of the security agencies, I don't think it will have to do with the personality of the past president. Probably it is possible that platforms or other requirements they have earlier asked for may be available them now for them to prosecute.
Like what?
Platforms, equipment, ships.
But they got the Tucano jets. That could get you some results. They got weaponry. That could get you some results. The former CNC told them, well, I think, did they say shoot at sight? But he said, look, make sure no such thing happens. We didn't see any kind of immediate reaction. We did ask several questions as of that. So what would be wrong if, well, he didn't get it right in some areas? He's not God.
I know he's human. He's human. He may not have gotten it wrong, but what I'm trying to say in essence is that if there's any drastic improvement in the activities of the military or other security agencies, it does not translate to the fact that the former president was not effective. And that's what I'm just trying to say. Most probably, equipment, resources that they have asked for earlier, 2-3 years ago. You know, it takes a process. You ask for something, you don't get it immediately. It takes a process before, of course, you get such things. So probably they are better equipped now.
Okay. So you will put it down to equipment. But, you know, I'm sure a lot of Nigerians have questions for the Navy, which you were once a part of. You commanded the Eastern Naval Command at some point.
Yes.
And I do know that, you know, part of the challenges which my colleague has pointed out and which the president is very concerned about, because it would seem that so far there's been a heavy focus on the economy. And one of our main sources of revenue is crude oil. We always have these parameters for our budget, how much we intend to produce and at what rate. And in the last couple of years, we've seen that the estimates for this has not been met in any way. In fact, if there's anything, there's been a great shortfall, not because we're not producing enough or the companies are not producing enough, but because of a grand scale of theft. Which, you know, last year, even the NNPC itself had to acknowledge. And there have been huge questions as to what exactly the Navy has been doing about it. From your own knowledge and from your experience within the Nigerian Navy, these figures, I mean, in terms of the reduction that we've seen, must have been quite embarrassing for the institution of the Navy as a whole. How would you say that they have handled that, considering the fact that also a contract has been awarded to Tantina Securities, is a consultancy limited, which we know belongs to a former Niger Delta militant government on Polo. So how has this worked with the Navy?
I think while in service, I retired December 2020, barely 3 years ago. And what the Navy has done to curb crude oil theft is through the deployment of its assets, and I will just give one or two. We have the Nigerian Navy has the Falcon I infrastructure and the regional maritime domain awareness infrastructure. These are surveillance facilities which assist the Nigerian Navy in monitoring activities out there at sea. I think what may have might be the limitation of this infrastructure is the fact that most crude oil theft happens at the backwaters. And the surveillance infrastructure the Nigerian Navy currently has is outward looking. So activities that happen at the backwaters were not adequately covered.
Are we helpless in that regard?
No, they are not helpless. But what the Navy has done to check that is to have established the choke point regime. And if I have to explain what it means, is that the Nigerian Navy has established naval security stations in such areas where crude oil theft is suspected to have been carried out. And I think that deployment have really achieved a lot in recent past. I may not be able to give you exact figures or facts of the current situation. I haven't left the service barely 3 years ago. So what I would say is that the Nigerian Navy is doing its best. And I think that for the Navy to actually achieve its desires, statutory responsibility, it needs the people, in particular the riverine community, to render information on the bad guys among them. And that the Navy, I know, is trying to do. If I will give an instance, when I was in service, I remember one of our personnel was involved in an infraction. I think it was involved in illegal refining of product. And he approached the traditional ruler of that community to see how he can compromise him, to allow him use his community to do such things. The community leader refused, and what he did was to report such personnel to the Nigerian Navy, and of course the personnel was sanctioned. So we also need the support of community leaders along the riverine areas, which will assist the Nigerian Navy to achieve such an objective, and that of course is through relevant intelligence and information on those involved in such crude oil theft.
Well, that has been on for a while in terms of, how do I put it now, asking for community involvement, asking for crude oil theft has been on for quite a while now. It did not come during the Buhari administration, even the Jonathan administration. In fact, what am I saying? The Yar'Adua administration had to deal with this so much that he had to, institute an amnesty program for Niger Delta militants who were making it impossible for Nigeria to meet its daily crude oil production quota. What I want to know is, looking at the fact that it's been that far back, and the fact that during the Jonathan administration, ex-Niger Delta militant had to be involved in such a way to curb this. Because as you said the Navy is outward looking, and maybe they need to now have their eyes more on what is happening, right in their backyard, let me put it that way. Because yes, we know that piracy is also a big thing, and NIMASA has been trying its best to collaborate with the Navy, and the Navy's been making great progress in the area of curbing piracy. But this is something that affects the country. Economic sabotage, borders really on economic sabotage. I'm wondering, did they feel embarrassed? Did they feel inadequate when these contracts were awarded to Niger Delta militants?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because security, like we all know, is everybody's business. And there's nothing wrong in this country, in the contract being awarded to, of course, the company you just mentioned. What I would say, in essence, is that the Nigerian Navy has all these years done its best to ensure the maritime environment is secured for economic activities to thrive. And maybe in the wisdom of the government at that time, decided to engage the security company. What I feel is what the Navy should do is to collaborate with the security agency and see how they can work together to ensure that, of course, the purpose of establishing such a security company is actualized. Getting embarrassed, I don't think the Navy is embarrassed. I don't think so. I don't think it is, because, like I said, security is everybody's business. And the only thing I want to urge the government is to see how they can help the Navy through the provision of platforms and ensure that the Navy is adequately equipped. Because this security company you are talking about even rely on the Navy on certain aspects of their jobs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the results that we've received so far have been mixed. At some point the contract was terminated, or maybe it was not renewed, as the case might be. It wasn't exactly going on as planned. We saw a dip again. The NNPC cried foul in terms of how much theft was actually going on. We saw that last year, mid last year, towards the end of last year, and then the company was re-engaged again. Even then, yes, we saw some immediate improvements, but the results are still mixed. Just was the last month or so, the NNPC talked about how Nigeria is currently producing 1.1 million barrels per day, still far short of what it is that we ought to be producing. For you, and what do you think is the major shift that needs to happen for us to be able to go back, or at least be able to meet the 2 million barrels per day which we have set for ourselves?
I think the major shift that should be done is, first of all, ensure that there's public awareness amongst the communities along the river area where this crude oil theft takes place. I know it's ongoing. I know things are still being done to improve on the current situation. Another thing that should be done again is for the government to be transparent. What I mean is, if I have to cast my mind back on the agitation in the South or in the Niger Delta area, is because of mistrust between the government and the people. So the government is expected to ensure that the trust deficit that have existed in the past does not occur again. I believe if the trust deficit is breached and the people gain the confidence of the government, I think they may reduce such theft. Again, development again should also be done. That is, government presence should be on that general area where those things are happening. I think if we do all those things...
Where the illegal bunkering is happening?
Yes. I mean, what I mean by government presence is that, of course, you hear that they say that there are better roads in the north than in the south. There are development that we are the one who produces oil, and yet there are more development in other parts of the country than others, and than where the product is being brought from. So we must ensure that we bridge that gap and gain the confidence of the people. If we do that, and again involve the community. Another area that I feel that should be done is that most of these international oil companies have MOUs with these host communities. And of course, in the past, they have been, not adhering to that MOUs. So international oil companies must be encouraged to ensure that most of the MOUs that are in place with this host community must be implemented 100%. If you do that, I think the issue of crude oil theft will be reduced drastically.
All right, let's bring in our colleagues from Lagos.
I think it's safe to say we can tell what the priorities or immediate priorities of the president is from some of the pronouncements we got yesterday after that meeting. Crude oil theft, asking them to put an end to it. And as much as there's a lot to talk about in that area, I'd also like to speak to the point he made about him not tolerating, security agencies working at cross purposes. A lot of people see that as interagency rivalry, different definitions given to it. And for him, he says that he won't condone security agencies working out cross purposes, speaking to the fact that that might be very important to him. And I wonder, we've heard this time and again, interagency rivalry is not good for us, it's not even good for the, the security results that we want to get. But what would it really take if we want to just go beyond talking about it? What would it really take to reduce to the barest minimum interagency rivalry or security agencies working at cross purposes?
I think what it will take for the security agencies to work together is just, of course, the issue of training together, exercising together, and also enlightening, particularly the lower cadre, on the need for them to respect other agencies of government who are involved in security, and of course other issues that borders on the general well-being of the country. What I would say is that at the higher level, that is at the officer cadre, you find out these infractions are not there. Why? Is because we join the service together, we train together, we exercise together. So we have that personal relationship. But at the lower level, this thing doesn't happen. So I think there should be need for, of course, joint training at the lower level, and of course, enlightening the younger ones on the need for them to respect other security agencies who are involved, of course, of providing security for the country.
But I always hear this as well, that, you know, it's the lower cadre that is usually responsible. But time and again, you see that they have some sort of backing. They have orders that they'll tell you, well, we're acting based on orders and we're not moving from this place. You do what you want to do. But this is based on the orders we get. And we know the chain of command. Hardly would you see those at the lower cadre carrying out activities without orders. I mean, it's a highly regimented, you know, setup. So what is really responsible for the interagency rivalry we've seen? Is it trying to outshine the others? Is it trying to prove that we're powerful or we're more powerful than you are? You see, for example, the army and the police, and people usually say, oh, the army will be stronger, and the police say, no, we're responsible for, you know, civil security, so this is our turf, and it goes back and forth. So what is really responsible? Maybe you can help Nigerians understand.
I think, like you have just said, is just to outshine one another. I think the president have that big responsibility to ensure that agencies who are supposed to report certain information to a particular agency to carry out their statutory responsibility that don't do that should be sanctioned. And again, areas where such infractions will take place, I think it will be important at the higher cadre level of the military institutions or the other security institutions. They should translate such down so that those who are on ground to execute those orders understand the need. I think what I'm trying to say in this is that it should be constant communication, and those that have violated or caused such infractions should be sanctioned. I think if we do that, and with proper understanding, I don't think we will have problems.
We've seen a lot of security briefings or meetings with the service chiefs. We're not quite sure all of the things that were discussed behind the scenes for this one, but at least we can talk about the things we heard. In the previous administration, there were lots of them. The president saying we have to rejig the security architecture. He said it not once, not twice. And for a lot of people, they didn't quite see that rejigging or restructuring. They wonder what was responsible for that. You said it wasn't about the president's personality. Maybe other things were in place. But yet again, we have seen another meeting, and perhaps marching orders have been given. It would seem for the past 4 days, since this administration came into power, I mean, we've not seen any major attack across board, either banditry or, you know, the usual clashes and all of that. It would seem we've not seen that. So what do you expect this president to do differently from the previous president, such that we don't just hear those things being talked about, we see them, and then there are repercussions when the ball is dropped?
What I would expect the president to do differently is to ensure that he's decisive in his decision-making, particularly as it affects the security agencies. I know the past regime do take its time, which of course is not bad, to decide on areas that affect the security agencies. So I expect the current president to be very decisive and quick in taking such decisions. Also, the leadership or the headship of the security and the intelligence agencies must be accountable to the people for their actions and decisions. And what I mean is that they are public servants. Whatever they are doing, they must be accountable to the people. They should be able to explain to the people why they are conducting certain operational exercises, and they should be able to explain to the people areas where they need to support the security agencies. And another area where I feel the current administration should do differently is not to be shy to sanction any head of security and intelligence agencies that may have caused infractions or may have done things that is outside their statutory responsibilities.
One question that, I mean, still on that issue of architecture, looking at the inaugural speech of the president, the second paragraph of the subhead of security says, to effectively tackle this menace, excuse me, we shall reform both the security doctrine and the security architecture. We shall reform both our security doctrine and its architecture. For a number of people, that word doctrine, even security agents, some security practitioners, picked on that word and said it really means something different from what we've always had. We've always heard the word architecture, but putting security doctrine in, that definitely is something. Could you help us understand what that means?
All the various security agencies, particularly if I would talk of the military, have doctrines that guide them towards their operations and activities. And maybe what the president means is because it's likely the doctrines in place have not been able to achieve the desired result he's expecting. So he may likely want the security institutions to rejig or moderate their doctrines. There's nothing wrong in it because the security environment is dynamic. What the security environment was like in May is not likely what it is now. So I think it's an assignment for those in the leadership of the various agencies and also for them to see how they can key into the incoming president vision, or if I call it, or guidance on what the institution should look like. Well, so I don't see anything wrong in it. Well, because doctrines change from time to time, policies change from time to time based on the analysis of the security environment at that time.
Well, it would be interesting to find out exactly what it means when the president says security doctrine. Was clear, explicit, unambiguous. Not just the architecture, but the doctrine. Because what we've heard, as my colleague Kadi mentioned to you the other time, is that most of the time we just hear the security agencies react to something that has happened as opposed to preventing it in most cases, unfortunately. Well, permit me to say that because, I mean, he who feels it knows it. We're the ones that feel and report, unfortunately, the death of fellow Nigerians very, very painfully. So it would seem like the doctrine tend to support fighting insecurity as opposed to preventing insecurity. If you can help us understand, what kind of doctrine did we practice before now or is still in force? And what would you want to see in that change to a security doctrine?
I think the doctrine that has been practiced in the past, of course, is proactive. I understand what you're saying now. It's proactive in nature. I don't think, with the meeting the president had with the service chief just yesterday, I'm sure they may have briefed him adequately on the details of the doctrines. Doctrines, like I said, may change from time to time based on the environment. So, if I would say, the president made a speech before he was briefed. Most likely, he may have a change in his decision, having received detailed brief from the service chiefs and having been privy to certain exclusive, or I will call it secret briefing or report, which we may have seen now. I believe, while I was in service, the doctrine in place was actually adequate in tackling the security challenges we had at that time. And like I said, it changes from time to time. If the doctrine the president is referring to in the next few months is not achieving the desired result, I know the institutions of the military will do their best to ensure they review it or modify it to suit the current situation on ground.
But we'll also look to see some changes from the police in terms of how they respond to this kind of message, because the IGP was in that meeting as well. Yeah. We thank you for coming on, Rear Admiral Matthew Mbekwe, retired Senior Naval Officer. Thank you for your time here today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
We will be back in a moment. Do stay with us.
The first subsidy is gone.
With that pronouncement on Monday, Nigerians went into a panic mode on Tuesday morning, leaving long queues at fuel stations in their wake. The fuel queues would later disappear following the release of a new pricing template by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, which has not been well received by Nigerians.
I was supposed to fill this tank like 8,000 naira, but how much did I spend now? 26,000 naira. It's really unfair.
At least the federal government would have said, okay, let us bring buses to alleviate the situation. Federal assisted mass transit buses from location to location, so that right now, as I'm speaking with you, I moved from Kuje to this place for 1,000 naira, and it was 300. It used to be 300 some hours ago.
Across northern Nigeria, the prices differ from state to state. While the price range hovers around 537 naira and 540 naira per litre. In states like Yobe, Borno, Zamfara, Katsina, and Gombe, the product is sold between 540 naira and 600 naira per litre.
A country that has a minimum wage of 30,000 naira, and you are now buying fuel for more than 30,000 naira per for a full tank, it means the whole thing is not matching.
Nevertheless, the regulators of the sector are promising to protect Nigerians from profiteering by oil marketers, while warning against hoarding of the products.
And ourselves, NNPRA and FCCPC, are going to be there to make sure that the consumer is not taken advantage of, so there is no profiteering. The players must play by the rules. There is no need to hoard because NNPC has ample supplies and they have been selling. You know, obviously, because of lack of clarity, on Monday there are a lot of station owners and depot owners that were holding back. But again, in most places now, the serving people are buying in, and if you look at, especially somewhere around Abuja and Lagos, it's just drive in, drive out. So for those in the hinterland, please let them just be rest assured that the market is open and there's ample petroleum products, especially premium motor spirit, to go around the whole country.
Now, for many Nigerians in the nation's capital, it's no longer about the availability of the product, as the queues have drastically reduced. But many Nigerians complain about the cost of the product, which has drastically reduced their purchasing power and, of course, increased the prices of goods and services. Dele Omoyeni, Channels Television News.
Mr. Olufemi Boyede is a certified international trade professional. Good morning and thank you for coming on today.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
So much talk, and there will be more on this fuel subsidy matter that proceeds with it. And yes, we know several people, everybody feeling the impact, and most people, if I could say. But for businesses such as yours, small businesses and Smedan, they also in the thick of some of these things. So even this morning we did highlight, we wonder how they are coping. So that's why you're here today. Yeah. So could you tell us, perhaps, maybe if you want to start with the rationale behind this in the first place, what is your understanding of why this is going on?
I think that we need to start by understanding there is this issue of times and seasons. And I actually begin to feel, I'm trying to avoid using very strong words, but I'm beginning to berate the communication mechanism of the government, previous administrations up till now, wherein the population actually has to scrounge for information, for justifications of what things are going on. They are left to assume, imagine, and maybe find their own ways out of things. I say all of this, have all of that summarized, simply means that fuel subsidy was not removed by the new administration. And 90% of the projections that I have seen, the very sensational headlines is that Bola Ahmed Tinubu has removed fuel subsidy. I think that all he said was that there was no allocation for fuel subsidy in the budget, which means technically there was no fuel subsidy or there was not supposed to be fuel subsidy at the onset of his administration. I think that could have been better communicated. I think people would have been put into the picture of what's really going on. Anyway, having said that, Nigeria is a country where, according to SMEDAN, we have 41.5 million nano, micro, small and medium enterprises, including mine, which account for about 80% of the jobs in Nigeria and contribute about 50% to Nigeria's GDP. This means that this is a sector that definitely you cannot ignore, or that you ignore at your own peril. It means that whatever touches the SMEs actually touches the very core of the Nigerian social welfare and economic space. That's why it's so important. And of course, the impact was almost immediate, or even if you want it, pre-immediate. I watched your experience driving into this filling station. I just drove out of the dental clinic on as you approach the city gate. There's a DSS clinic there. I just drove out of there and then took the right turn at the Koza church there to come into Games Village. And I felt I needed watermelon. The watermelon I bought 24 hours, 800 naira. I asked the guy, and he insisted that he wasn't going to take anything less than 2,000 naira. And I asked him, why this? He said, well, Bakashama Iba, did you not buy fuel just now? How much did you buy fuel?
So, was it watching those guys? Oh, you guys, if you can afford that, then
no,
this
he actually had to prove to me that he knew what he was doing, because lo and behold, immediately he brought out his identity card and showed me that he was the vice chairman of the security apparatus of Games Village. And so that he knows what he's doing, he's abreast of the situation. And if the price of fuel has gone up 287%, then the price of watermelon needed to go up about 250% to catch up.
When you say that to ignore that sector is at their own peril, I was going to ask you if you got a sense that with that pronouncement, if it's tantamount to in ignoring that sector, and possibly, perhaps, okay, go ahead and respond to that.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that they're ignoring that sector. But I'm saying that perhaps potentially they've not captured the implications or potential implications of the impact on the sector.
Which is impact such as several other persons who will look at that single announcement and it's the prices to the fuel pump, and then they say, well, we just calculate and recalibrate whatever we do based on what we've seen from the petrol.
Exactly, because economic activity, especially as concerns the SME sector, is a total value chain. If you look at it from the agricultural sector perspective, you look at from farm to farm gate to the dining table. And every single segment of the value chain is actually impacted. One, the man who increased his watermelon from 800 naira to 2,000 naira is already explaining to me that the taxi that he takes from Giri to Abuja is going to charge him 1,000 naira instead of a previous 400 naira. And then when he goes to buy other things for himself, he will find the prices have gone much higher than he met them yesterday. So there's basically no part of the operations or the commercial transactions that is not going to be are impacted by this. Now, my fear is in a country where it took us so long to debate the raising of the minimum wage to 30,000 naira.
Of which some states are still not paying.
Which are still not paying. And well, I don't know the size of your tank. For my vehicle, a Highlander, I calculated with my driver it will cost us 40,750 naira to fill the tank when it's empty. So I fill my tank once for at the 1.5 times somebody's salary. I wonder how that will impact remember we're talking about 80% jobs that SMEs are creating and the 50% contribution they have to national GDP. I wonder how this will actually impact them.
So big questions. I mean, even for people like your driver, who you might need to now up his salary because the cost of transportation has increased, you know, and a number of other things. I mean, the variables are really a lot. But as somebody who is certified international trade professional, I'm sure you talk to small businesses as well. If you were to talk to government, because now Labour is having a conversation with government, oftentimes they speak almost on behalf of everybody, and usually from the perspective of workers. But from the perspective of small business owners, if they too were to have a conversation with government, where would you say that government now needs to focus on in terms of its interventions in that sector?
Yeah, well, let's borrow a word from the COVID era, palliative. Because for me, and I'm not playing the devil's advocate here, I'm just trying to speak reality. For me, fuel subsidy is something that should have been done away with probably 3 administrations ago. Because at the end of the day, the impact of subsidy has never been felt by the average consumer of PMS in this country. It's always been making multi-billionaires out of the handful of people who found access to the subsidy regime. So that has to go with finality. Now, how does its removal, how does it impact? I think that we should now, if I was to be opportune to be speaking to the economic team, I will be talking about now developing a basket of palliatives that have direct impact on the otherwise negative inflationary potential of the removal of subsidy on the economic activities in Nigeria. One, we only talked about vehicles. We didn't talk about generators. Nigeria, we've always talked about infrastructure, and the 2 infrastructure components that directly impact the cost of doing business in Nigeria. 1, power. 2, logistics, transportation. So that still comes back. In fact, both are tied to the cost of PMS. So if we had something that directly removes the challenge of power, of access of SMEs to electricity to power their businesses, and that also helps them to reduce the cost of transportation, then we will be actually helping them already without going back to debate the bringing back the pump price to 195. We will be helping to sort out the other aspects that they apply money to. How can we do this? And I'm happy that President Tinubu's speech already mentioned that what should otherwise have been spent on fuel subsidy is now going to be spent on developing infrastructure. Trade-related infrastructure will include things like, of course, how the products get from the farm to the market. Maybe now we need to redouble or triple our efforts on providing rail rather than trailer haulage of our goods from farm gate to the market. We now need to look at the possibility. Potentially, what Smedan had started on a small scale, maybe now it's time to scale up really and have major common facility centers around the world, around the SME world, around the major markets, where, for example, as a fish seller, frozen fish or meat, if I have leftover, some time ago, a few years ago, I lived in Ikorodu. I tried to do a rough estimate on how much the tomato sellers were losing on a daily basis in K2 and Mile 12. And I think there was a rough agreement that time with the NBS. It was probably about 12 million naira lost to wastage because of absence of storage infrastructure. Okay. So if we are taking the money meant for subsidy to develop all of these things, it will have direct economic impact on SMEs.
When we talk about money meant for subsidy, or that the public or the masses have not really benefited from that, it's by the elite, there are several questions as to whether or not that should be taken as the real scenario, because government cannot even tell us how much petrol do we consume in this country. Now, if you say these are subsidy thieves, who are they? They're not spirits, they're humans. Who are? Have you told us who these people are? So there are several questions we keep wondering. And now, subsidy has never been removed. Now that it's been removed, look at the price now. Is it the elite that is buying fuel only at 5.37 or 57 per litre? Everybody is going to buy it as well. So how do they then say, oh, it's only the elite? So who's benefited?
Okay, so the answer is in the question. When we're talking about a few, now let's bring in the word faceless elites had been benefiting. We don't want to see their faces.
We want to prosecute it.
Let them.
If they are thieves, there's a law in this country.
If they were.
If they exist.
The same way, how did they access this? They manufactured documents. There definitely was an application process. There was a way where you file in, you have facilities to distribute 30,000 liters of PMS, and because of this, you are losing X and Y. These were things that were potentially manufactured, forged, and presented. Now it's not there. That's the point I'm at, not at who it was. It's no longer there, so there is nothing to manufacture. Yeah. There's nothing to present, to collect anything.
Doesn't that actually raise questions as to whether or not we really are paying subsidy, and to what extent? Because if government then says, look, okay, well, these are fake people or whatever it is, and then you stem that, you get that out, you should then be able to tell us, well, this is now the actual amount that we consume, this is the actual amount that we spend, because what we see doesn't just add up.
Agree. So just before I came in, you were talking about security.
Yeah.
Security is not just the life and property or the physical lives of the people. Security is also in procuring and accessing or making accessible the right information. Mm-hmm. So now that there is no subsidy, now that the elite or cabal are no longer there, then we are able to know exactly what we consume. Now that there is no need to extrapolate and say in Jigawa we have 2 million vehicles, so we must have access to 5 million liters of PMS per day. Now the reality is going to come out, because there is no need, there is nothing you are expecting. If you took the same 5 million liters that you were taking from the central depot and take to Jigawa today, what your profit was on the subsidy. If you don't get it, that means that you have the market that is glutted.
Part of why we say some of this is a questionable, because they tell us, oh, it's being smuggled, and that is why, as if they are helpless when it's being smuggled, and then you are government, you are the law, you see all of these things, and then you say, oh, it's being smuggled, and because of that, that's why people ask, are the reasons they give us for removing this actually tenable? But my colleagues in Lagos have got questions for you, so maybe they'll follow up. Go ahead, guys.
Okay. Well, thanks, Chamberlain. Mr. Boyede, I really want to also speak to the point you were making, because I know that this also touches on the, the small and medium enterprises, how they fare, because they're meant to be a major lifeblood of our economy. And the example you were giving of yourself, spending over 40,000 to fill your tank, and then you brought in your driver, and as Mark said, he just painted that picture. So you have less disposable income because you have to fill your tank for your vehicle, you have to fill your generating set as well. So I don't know how much you make on a monthly basis. You might run into millions and all of that, but you have less disposable income. And you have to, of course, pay your driver, who also has to go to market, ply the roads, essentially spend more for transportation, for watermelon and all of that. So I imagine your driver will be saying, I need to earn more money. Okay, the one I'm earning now cannot get me home and fend for my family. And that should be the case for a lot of people. They'll have more people demanding from them if they are employers, for example, because it's only natural. So what is really the way? Is there a way out of this, or is there a way to ameliorate this for those who have to make those real choices? You can share your experience. Have you been able to rationalize the way out of this?
Thanks so much. This now throws open the need, and not the need is a bit weak, the imperative for a broad-based stakeholder consultation, especially with the masses, with the grassroots, with the SMEs who are taking the brunt of this. Oh yes, realistically, one is now part of the elite because you have to drive into the station and fill your tank for 40,000 naira. How much? What's the salary of the guy who even drove the vehicle into the filling station for the first time? Okay, I mentioned palliatives. If we had a broad-based consultation in the midst of several council, there is wisdom, and then there could be a realistic way out for Nigeria. I was just giving the example of common facility centers. I was also talking about investing more heavily in haulage and the supply chain, because the supply chain that was disrupted earlier on by COVID globally, now is disrupted by the removal, further disrupted by the removal of fuel subsidy, if it was ever subsidized, and what have you. So I think really the way out is what should probably have been done earlier, a broad-based consultation, which I think I also see does not happen as often as it needs to in this part of the world. First, we are given the policy, and then we now go back to go and consult. Because I think we should first have consulted and had a general agreement on what we could do, how the implementation will affect us, and how between us and government we can have steps, strategies, activities that will help to absorb the shock that comes. I think that's what we need to do now.
I think that was one of the major, pardon me, the grouse a lot of people had with the Jonathan administration. Bearing in mind, actually, that the Jonathan administration had been doing some consultations. Remember, the Minister of Finance, the CBN governor, they had been, with Labour, they had been holding these sort of town hall meetings across the country. Yes, they were maybe meant to hold more, but I mean, it just came upon us on January the 1st, 2012. But speak to this in terms of managing expectations. I know Chamberlain had touched on that. You said that the money that we're meant to spend on subsidy can be channeled into other things. But Mr. Boyede, we have seen the budget. We have seen the budget deficit at what, 10 trillion naira. If we're to pay subsidy more, it would be 12 trillion naira. And we're meant to even borrow to make up for that, that deficit. Our revenues was about 10, or is meant to be about 10 trillion. So is there really that money first of all, that we can actually say, oh, we're not using it for subsidy, let's put it in other things? The money is not there, is it? So let's help Nigerians manage their expectations well.
There are so many things that can be done. And I think that the inner part of me is growing more excited every day when I hear talk about a doable economic turnaround. And this can be done across sectors. The SME, of course, being the engine, the hub of economic transformation. So what I see is hope. What I see is, I think, what the president saw when he said, I applied for this job. All of these challenges that we are seeing and we're crying about, I think the president saw them. I think he lives with them. I think just like the illiterate I spoke to about a month ago who said, Tinubu Shidan Kaswane, I think we have a president who understands the vagaries, who understands the realities, who understands the potentials, and therefore can tinker with what's happening in the business space. Okay, well, we have had consultations in the past. Even the immediate past administration did orchestrate a periodic meeting. They call them SME clinics across the countries. The outcomes were never implemented. So I think that the new administration can take off from collecting or retrieving the reports and outcomes of these previous consultations. Well, no need starting by reinventing the wheel. Let's see what the summary is. Let's look at top 3, top 5 areas where we can have. Of course, Nigeria, we already designed the word low-hanging fruits.
You kindly pardon me to butt in for the exigency of time. You know, you just talked about the president, the Nigerians waiting to give the president a chance, taking some of these things. But you began on a very, very shocking note for me, because I have advocated for micro, small, and medium enterprises. To now know that there is an N in front of micro, it's a little shocking, and I'm pretty sure for a number of other people as well. How will those nano and micro businesses cope within the short time that we have? I'm looking at the data. 4 years ago, according to Nairametrics, Nigerians spent about $12 billion fueling generators. The following year, AFDB estimated that figure to be $14 billion spent on fueling generators. This is 3 years ago. God knows how much it was last year, and God knows how much people will have to invest in fueling generators this year due to this. So, given that, particularly for small businesses, what are the quick wins that you think the federal government and possibly even the states can ramp up quickly, so that at least we don't lose it all in the name of trying to make Nigeria better in the future?
Yeah, so I did mention it a few minutes ago. I talked about creating or increasing access to common facilities. I did go to a building in Isaleko, in the Idumota area, a building where you had almost 200, just one 3-story building, almost 200 nano businesses. And each one was operating his or her own generator. It was a cacophony, it was a chaos. But each of these persons will need to go to the filling station now to buy fuel at 500 naira or 488 naira per liter. Now imagine bringing all of those 200 or 250 generators together and not having them. Now you have one single 100, 200 kVA generator. I'm not advocating a generator-led economy, by the way. I'm looking forward to a revamp of the national grid wherein we can actually have access to power. But quick win. Let's see how, probably through SMEDAN and the collaboration with other business-oriented trade support institutions, TSIs, we can actually provide access to common facilities at cheaper rates. It's a complete different ball game. If I can pay 500 naira to stop per night to store my unsold fish in mile 12, than if I have to buy 20 liters of petrol to run my own generator to store the same amount of fish. There's a big gap in the difference. There's a complete difference. For example, if I have to take my 25 kilograms of stuff that I've created from Abuja Airport to Banjul International Airport, walking alone, than if I did a groupage. Maybe I'm going on ASCII or I'm going on Airpeace. If I did a groupage and there were 5, 6 of us who combined together, we have a bigger volume, and therefore we have the economies, of, the advantage of reduced price per kg and stuff like that. So now I'm looking at an economic direction in which cooperation, collaboration, and what do you call it, common community will actually result in a reduced unit price of production and therefore increase competitiveness and ease of doing business.
Well, Uncle, at that point, we do thank you very much indeed for coming on this morning. Mr. Olufemi Boyede is a certified international trade professional. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, we will be back in a moment. We'll be talking football. Don't go away. Well, this is a welcome distraction from all the vagaries of the economy, I tell you. Mr. Peters will tell us why. I show here Grace. Good morning. He joins us next, as a matter of fact. Good to see you again today on the program. Well, what have you been up to ever since? It's been a while we had you on the program.
Well, I've been enjoying myself and taking a beautiful rest. I'm back to Nigeria. You know, I'm in Port Harcourt as I speak to you. It's been a while. I've been away for 25 years. So I'm trying to adjust myself back into the system and see how valuable I can be.
Okay, we'll talk about what you've been doing in a moment, but at the moment we seem to be loving the Flying Eagles, and they're rightly called because they're doing the right things, except, well, yes, so far, beating Argentina. Now they're going to face their next opponent, South Korea. But from the performance of this team, are we having our hopes too high, or do you think people are just generally cautiously optimistic, or perhaps just enjoy the ride while it lasts? We'll come back to the spirit of sportsmanship much later. Whatever happens, happens.
I think we've suffered for a very long time, you know, with our national teams not doing too well. So the pressure's been on Nigeria as a whole. We never win games. In the last few years, I would say we hardly win games. And I had somebody say this is the president's victory. You know, there's always been this thing, you know, that every time we have a president, we look at our results. That when we win games in football, it means that the president will do well. So the day he was sworn in, we won our game. So it's a good sign. It's actually a good sign. And we must give it to the boys. We must give it to the boys. Remember, they've played some of the top teams in the world. They've played against Italy, and played against Brazil, played against Argentina now. In anywhere in the world, these are top teams. And with their youth system, and it's almost near to perfection. You know, we're quite surprised because most of our players are home-based players. And we're quite surprised that they've done this well thus far. You know, for me, the game against Argentina, I wasn't too sure we're going to win. I really wasn't too sure. After we had the drubbing from Brazil, I felt the morale was going to be low. And thank goodness, absolutely goodness, that they turned around and they've made Nigeria so proud.
But that match against Brazil, and then having seen the performance of the boys after that match up until now? I know we'll be facing next opponent, which is not Brazil. Do you get the impression that looking at the performance, we could have corrected our errors and we could face them head on this time and possibly even nick it?
I think so. You know, when we got to play Brazil, technically we had qualified. We knew that with 6 points, we were up to the quarterfinals, to the next round. So most times your mindset is like, okay, let's preserve our players. Let's not go in for those hard tackles. I remember these players at 20 years, 18, 19, they want to sell themselves. So they're basically careful. They're not just playing for Nigeria. They're playing for themselves and playing for their future. So you expect them to be careful, which was what happened against Brazil. And Brazil, as at that time, had 4 points, you know, and they needed to win against us to qualify, which they did. The dicey game we played against Argentina was quite a shock. Like I said, no one, even in the football circle, among media people, too many people did not give them a chance that they were going to win against Argentina. Argentina had come into this game with 9 points. They had won their last 3 games, and they are the host. You know, there's this saying that FIFA would always want the host to go further, because the further they go, the more it's good for the tournament there. So there's always this theory here and there that FIFA would support the host teams, the referee would support the host teams. But well, this time it didn't work that way. Thank God for the VAR. It didn't work that way, and Nigeria convincingly, I would say convincingly, beat Argentina. And we're to the next round. We're playing another game on Sunday, which is the most dicey of all the games we're going to be playing in this tournament.
Well, having beaten the host, they should just adopt us as the host then. And nothing wrong with that. So,
it doesn't work that way, generally.
I know, but...
Yeah, they will hate us now. People will start booing us, you know. The fans will boo us. They'll come against us because we deprive them of the joy of lifting the trophy, of going further. So we will be enemies. All the fans in Argentina will hate the Nigerian team.
I think we should just flip that booing and use it to our advantage. That should spur us on and say, okay, well, you know what, you think you can boo us, then we'll put on a better performance. Yeah. But how far do you see this team going?
I think we should take the game, the matches per game. We watched the game yesterday when Korea played Ecuador. So what a game of football, very dicey. The Koreans are quick. The same thing happened to us. If I reflect, I was the media officer of the Super Eagles, and we were in South Africa 2010. We played all our games, and we needed to get a draw. I think a draw against the same Korean side to be able to progress to the next level. This was 2010 World Cup, and we were all saying, you know, the Nigerian Palace, we'll go finish them, we'll go kill them, we'll move to the next round, which affected us, and we did not win that game. They had come to the dressing room. I know Adenuga, as at that time, had come to the dressing room where he had to address the team and promise us $1 million. $1 million if we beat Korea, which is what is going to happen to this team. And I've always said, leave these players alone. I just saw a video where some guy went to the teams and promised them, gave them $3,000 for winning. We must keep money away from this team. We must allow these boys to focus. I've always said it. There's this thing we do in Nigeria that is quite irritating. You bring officials into the dressing room. You bring NFF staffs into the dressing room. It's confusion. Allow the coach to sit with the players, address the players, impact the players with the knowledge that he wants to impact them, because they have another game to play or have 45 minutes to go into. It's become a norm in our national team, and it's killing us.
I hope they'll get it right this time. I mean, we just saw footages of that flying header. I can't get enough of that flying header, second goal there, or fantastic scenario.
Yeah.
That's the Eagles of old.
I jumped in my house. I was like, I was one that scored the goal. I screamed and I knew it was over, because we were under a lot of pressure. The tension was unbearable until we got the second goal.
You know, I'll leave my colleagues to talk about the next match much later, but let me ask you this before then. These young lads, you said mostly home-based. Now we've got new government in different states at the center as well. We don't know how much of those governors, their interest in football or in sports, because it's a massive avenue that we could fly the flags of this country across the world really high. So from where you are in Rivers, what can you tell us about sports development, probably football in the States?
I think when it concerns sports, we have the best governor, or we had. Shockingly to say we had the best governor. He was a pillar of sports in Nigeria. We could see he started the Real Madrid Academy, which I think the present governor will look to, the Rivers State United team, the Angels team. A whole lot of things were done for sports. The biggest regret I think he would have is that Rivers United did not win any continental tournament, which is a big shame that with all the monies that were spent, we did not win the Continental Cup for him just to crown his effort. The new governor, it's crazy about sports, absolutely crazy about sports. And I know that he plays for an all-star team. I don't want to mention the name of the all-star team he plays. He plays for an all-star team here in Port Harcourt. And somehow there's been an interaction. We've talked sports a little bit here and there with people around him, and his love for the game, his love for sports is just unbelievable. So we believe in that. Well, we don't know who will be the sports commissioner. We just hope that he gets the right sports commissioner, not just a sports commissioner that is a sports person. It's not political. It has to be a sports person. We need a whole lot of things to play. We have a massive facility here. We need the sports commissioner to be involved in swimming, in cricket, in hockey, in football, and a whole lot of things. And we're here watching, and we hope that right decisions will be made. But I really do believe he loves the game, he loves the sports, and Rivers State is basically a sports hub. So we will support him in any which way he needs our support. We'll advise in any way. For me to have come back to Nigeria after 25 years, I think I have loads of experience that if we're called upon to support in any which way, we'll be available.
I know there's still lots of questions about sports at the national level, the national stadium, for example. I mean, such a sore point for lots of Nigerians. If you can hear me, Mr. Peterside? Okay, looks like we'll try to fix that. Can you hear me now, Mr. Peterside?
I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. I was just referring to the National Stadium, Abuja. I mean, the floodlights, all of those very, very sad stories we hear coming out of that. Still, we have, sports people, the under-20, for example, that are trying to do the nation proud and would like to tie our grassroots sports naturally to how they perform out there. But it will look like time and again, they keep defying all of the odds. What do you expect? Because I know that whatever comes out of this will be tied to the government. I remember one of the players dedicating his goal to President Tinubu just after that match. But we need to speak the hard truths to ourselves and talk about our grassroots. So what is your expectation? We'll talk about the match against South Korea, but I just wanted to speak to what you would expect, maybe from the national stadium issues to what the coming minister of sports needs to do and all of that.
Well, we from the videos and the things we've had around, I remember that ex-players at a particular time went to visit Tinubu when he was officially declared the flag bearer of APC. We have had sports ministers. Okay, our last sports minister, Barry, give it to him. But I think he was more all about the economic side. Yes, he might not like me to say this, but the economic side of the game. We need a typical sports person, for me. A typical sports person. We need ex-sports person, ex-player, someone that has played the game, someone that has been involved. And we have a whole lot of educated ex-players in every sport, swimming, hockey, athletics, whatever it is. We have a lot of them educated enough. I think they should be brought in. Our sports must be run by a sports person. The Minister of Sports must be a sports person.
Well, Mr. Pitterside, I mean, it just, you took the word right out of my mouth, because one of the issues that's most disturbing for me, look at the excitement of those boys after scoring the second goal, after winning that match. The excitement is just communicable, if I can use that term. So the question for me is sustaining and institutionalizing the structures that can help those things to continue. The players only want to do one thing, and that is play. Have fun on the football pitch. Just have fun. But when they have to go to the field with the bother in their head, am I going to get paid? When am I going to get paid? All those issues, it's a certain distraction for them. So on the one hand, we have the footballers and the sportsmen doing their thing. But we seem to have a drop down, for want of a better word, with the managers of the game, as you have put it. You talked about the sports minister being more interested in the business of it. But then you are saying a sports person should come in. The challenge that we may have now is, if we have a sports person, and that is definitely someone who will understand, the vagaries of the situation and all of that, but we seem to have more challenge in the area of management of both the personnel, the talents, and the business of the game. Don't you think?
Kayode, that's what I'm saying. You need a sports person that understands the feelings of the players. Without the players, be it hockey, football, cricket, without the players, no sports. Now, the emphasis must be on the goose that lays the egg. We don't do that. We don't put emphasis on our sportsmen. Anywhere in the world, anywhere in Europe, these players are more valuable. All we hear here is who is the NFF president, who is the president of the Hockey Association, but no emphasis is placed on the goals. So we must look at how would these players function optimally? What structures do they need to function? They have their coaches. How do we support them to function? What is happening in our sports is systematic decay. I call it systematic decay because the fish rot things from the top. The president there doesn't love the game. The sports minister doesn't love the game. The administrators don't love the game. They're after what will come to them. Right. Now, it's systematic decay. And it trickles down to the performance. It trickles down to the performance of the players. Right. So we must look at it from the top there. Look at our stadiums. Look at already the Abuja Stadium that was built with billions of naira. You can't play on the pitch. It's absurd. Really, the pitch is not good.
It's one of the sad tales of sports in Nigeria, and I'm glad you're raising that point. We need to wrap up very soon. I was going to call you, Bishop, just a moment. Maybe he's one of the people that was just calling you right now. But we have a match on Sunday against South Korea. I mean, look at South Korea beat Ecuador. Recall that Ecuador beat Fiji. What was it, 7-0 or some outrageous scoreline? Yeah. What do you expect Coach Ladamboso to do this time around? Yes, we beat Argentina, but South Korea can be tricky.
Okay, well, there's a sequence I've seen. I will try to send messages across. Play. That's what I use the word play. Okay? Because at this age, they want to play, they want to be seen. Already we're hearing information. So there's a player, our central defender, it wants to be signed by Bayern Munich. Our midfielder wants to be signed by Anderlecht. We don't need that kind of distraction. Keep away the agents from these players and tell them, play for your country. Play for your country. Play as a team. Have the team cohesion first. Then later, the legacies of your performance will show. Play for the country. Play as a team. I saw Argentina when Argentina played us. There was a number 10 that had the ball. If he had just passed the ball to his colleague, he would have scored. But he wants the glory. He wants to be another Messi. So he shot from a very tight angle. We must dissuade that. Play as a team, pass the ball around, and build your team.
All right, Mr. Pitterside, we're expecting that. Hopefully, we should be seeing Rivers leverage on some of the experience that you've garnered over the years, because if he loves football and several other sports, people will want to see results, I reckon. All right. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Ida Peterside, and all the best to you and Rivers, as a matter of fact. Okay, so we have some feedback, some messages coming through from you out there. This is a tweet, so we will start with this particular tweet, talking about some of the issues that we discussed moments ago. So he says, the only thing that's giving Nigerians joy at the moment is Flying Eagles. They should keep it up. We are right behind them. Love it.
Indeed, they should keep giving Nigerians joy. But take a look at this. Godwin Aigbe says the average Nigerian does not profit from fuel subsidy. It needs profit from its importation, while the rich and political class fill 10, 15, or 20 cars to convey one man from one place to another. However, the deregulation should be 100%. I really wait to see what impact it will have on those convoys. If we're still going to be fueling them from our pockets and doing 20, 30 cars in one convoy, we'll wait and see. But yes, Godwin Aigbe, I'm certainly with you on this one.
You know, someone had suggested that there should be two price bands, one for the SUV people, the other for the average Nigerian. But take a look at this tweet from Innocent. Fuel subsidy removal, in fact, it's a mail. Fuel subsidy removal will not be easy for Nigerians for sure, but I'm sure we will cope with it. Earlier this year, January to February, fuel was sold 400 naira and more here in Abia State, that's southeast Nigeria.
Another mail from Ali Saleh says, government officials too should cut the number of vehicles in the convoys that escort them to office. Well, Kade and Mokwe, Ali Saleh is with you. And this one is from Henry. Henry says, national security doctrine is the operational philosophy that underscores the architecture, strategy, and tactics in protecting the nation from internal and external security threats. The president's thinking of reviewing the national security doctrine means he intends to conduct a holistic overhauling of the security systems and practices. It's a welcome development, but it doesn't end in that inaugural speech. Best wishes, Mr. President. That's from Henry, and that's the last of the mails we can take on the program this morning. Certainly, there are a lot more on our Twitter handle, that's Sunrise Daily Now and Channels TV. Have a wonderful rest of your day and weekend. I'm Ayo Makinde.
I must confess, it's always an enjoyable ride with you, knowing you're on that other side. But thank you so much. Have a restful weekend, okay? Maybe less fuel queues, more enjoyment. I'm Karadoki Kyoto.
And Flying Eagles, keep doing what eagles should do. Fly, keep flying. Thank you for watching this week. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
And I am Chamberlain Osor. Goodbye.